Hi, I'm back with another toy review. This time we're looking at Nickelodeon's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line by Playmates. I haven't had a chance to see the new show, but from what I've seen, it seems pretty good. Sort of straddling the line between the 80s and the 2003 version of the TV shows. Still pretty far off the original darker 80s comics, but I couldn't resist picking up these figures. I've never actually owned any Ninja Turtles before, so this was a great chance. As for Playmates, well, I know that they were the original makers of the Ninja Turtles figures. My only experience was the 2009 Star Trek line, which is awful, and the Terminator Salvation line, which I didn't even bother getting because it was just incredibly bad. So I wasn't too sure about this, but picking these up, I'm so glad I got them. These are absolutely excellent figures. Okay, here's a little look at the packaging. You're going to be really hard pressed to miss these on the shelves. I mean, they're neon purple and green. I also like the way they've got the logo is quite reminiscent of the original 80s comic logo, which is a really nice touch. Each one has their character name as well as a little brief summary of what they are. So we've got Donatello here is inventor and weaponeer. Looking at the back, they've got a cut out and keep bio card with a little history of them, their weapon of choice and their team affiliation. Obviously in this case it's Donatello's team affiliation is the Ninja Turtles. And then a look at the other figures in the line. So you've got Shredder, Krang, which in this version is actually the name of the aliens in general, not just Krang, the Utrom I think they were called in the originals, Foot Soldier and Splinter. Okay, here we are looking at the Turtles out of the packaging. Now the first thing you probably notice is that the head sculpts are different. Not only that, Playmates have gone to great effort to give these characters each unique design. Donatello is actually the tallest, with it going through to the right with Michelangelo being the shortest. They also have different plastrons, which are the orange shells on the front, and Raphael has a chunk taken out of his, which is a really great addition. They've got different straps, and you might be able to see here that Donatello has a kind of bumpy effect on his skin. Now, Playmates could have just released the same turtles 4 times with different colour bandanas, but they actually went to the extra effort here to make them look unique, which is a fantastic touch, especially considering that they're only about £10 each. I really like the sculpt on these figures, though it's actually quite different from the Nickelodeon TV show. In the show they're quite angular and reminiscent of the Star Wars Clone Wars TV series. I think it's a really good idea that Playmates went down this route, as I think this offers a definitive version of the Turtles. They look suitably mean enough to match the 80s comic, as well as kid-friendly enough to match the later TV shows. If you missed NECA's release of the Ninja Turtles from the 80s comic, I highly recommend picking these up. One thing I do think is a shame though is there's a lot of effort that's gone into the sculpting when it comes to the skin and the wraps and the plastrons. There's a lot of detail in there if you look closely, and it's kind of lost in these block colours. Now what I'm going to be doing with these is using a dark wash on them to really bring out these details. You'll be able to see here there's nice effects on the wraps here as well as the skin and on the shells. So with a wash these could really look fantastic, and I've seen tutorials of other customizers who've turned these into really something special. In terms of paint, these all do really well. There is room for improvement. Aside from their unique bandana colours, they also have unique paintwork on their skin, shells, plastron, straps, wraps and pads, as well as gold embellishments on Leonardo and Donatello's straps. Their weapons are cast in single colour plastic. Leonardo and Raphael managed to get away with this with their silver weapons, and to a lesser extent Donatello. But it's Michelangelo where it really suffers, because his chains are orange as well, and it kind of throws off the design. Aside from that though, they do still look really great. Okay, here we are with the Turtles from behind. As you can see, they've each got unique weapons holder, and something I hadn't noticed until I started filming this, but even their shells are actually different designs, which is really good considering that's a fairly minor detail. All the holders work fairly well, apart from Michelangelo's, who's because he's got quite chunky nunchucks, and as well as the plastic on the chain instead of a real chain, it can make it quite hard to get in there, as well as damaging the actual plastic chain. I wouldn't really recommend taking it in and out unless you're planning on replacing the chain with a real one, which is something I actually plan to do after I finish this review. Here's a little look with the Turtles' weapons. Of course, each turtle comes with their signature weapons. Leonardo has his katanas, Raphael has his sais, Donatello has his bow staff, and Michelangelo has his nunchucks. Now each of these also come with a plastic weapons tree. They seem to include a variation on their signature weapons. Leonardo has a extra sword which actually has a different design on the hilt. It appears to be a wrapping around it. Raphael has these kind of hook blades, as well as a version of his size that only use 2 blades. Donatello has a kind of bow staff with a blade at the end, as well as a segmented bow staff with chains holding them together. And Michelangelo has a similar kind of nunchuck, again with a blade, as well as a chain, and I imagine this is probably a metal piece here. Probably, I imagine it would be used to swing at enemies. They also include a selection of throwing weapons. Leonardo has these throwing knives, and I'm not quite sure what this is. It seems to be a very short dagger. Of course, there's the throwing stars here. Whoops. This is the same design for Raphael's and Michelangelo's, and there is a unique throwing star for Donatello. Now these work for 2 of the characters for the most part. You have these silver blades for Leonardo and Raphael. That works fine. Now the problem comes for Donatello and Michelangelo's weapons. This throwing star is supposed to be metal, and you see that it's cast from orange plastic like the rest of his weapons. It doesn't really work. This is the same for the chains on his weapons. In the prototypes that they showed, they were actually real chains, so I'm not sure why they changed this, but the throwing stars do sit very well in their hands. Not quite firmly, but I don't think they'll fall out very easily. They each come out of their weapons tree very easily, and they're a really nice addition to the set. They could have just done the signature weapons again, but Playmates have really knocked out of the park here and added the extra weapons. One of the really nice additions is the fact that Raphael is actually sculpted so you can hold his size in his right hand through the middle fingers. This is how traditionally size is supposed to be held. Now for some reason they didn't include this in his left hand, but the fact that we get this in just one hand alone is a really nice touch, and just is another point towards Playmates and making these unique. Again, for articulation, these figures do really well. They have ball jointed heads with a great range of motion, hinge shoulders, hinge elbows, swivel wrists, hinge hips, with the plastron made from soft rubber, so we get an extra range of motion there. And then you've also got the hinge knees. Now there are a couple points where it could be improved. It'd be good if they had some ankle articulation to help with some more dynamic posing. These are ninjas after all. And if they had a double hinge here on the knees, which apparently the prototypes had on them but was removed for some reason, probably money costs, it would have again really helped with their posing. Regardless, these do still pose really well on their own. Barely have any trouble standing them up, and you can get some great ninja poses, as our boys here are demonstrating. All in all, these are truly excellent figures. For the price you get excellent sculpting and on the whole very good articulation and paint. With a little work, customizers can make them truly awesome, with some repaints and some chains added to Michelangelo's weapons. I highly recommend picking these up. They're superb value for money.